Welcome to another exciting episode right here on IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Ronnie Wong, and today we're going to be taking a look at Project Management Professional, PMP. And we're actually going to get into that weird realm of actually formulas a little bit and learning how to do earned value. And who better to help us than Mr. Don Pizzette. How's it going, Don?
It is going great, Ronnie. Ready to jump right back into our Formulas in Action series. We're going to get a chance to see some of these formulas actually get used, which is really nice. Sometimes we memorize the formulas, we learn about them, but if you don't actually use them, it's hard to really grasp exactly what they do. So we're going back and revisiting each of these formulas and getting a chance to kind of see them and see how they might turn up on the exam. So in this episode, we're going to kick off earned value. And if you've watched our other series, you know that earned value management is kind of a big deal. It's really a lot of stuff to understand. But at the end of the day, it boils down to a very simple formula for calculating out your earned value. And so we want to take a look at that. But there's one thing that has always bothered me about project management textbooks that are out there. The books that I studied from, the courses that I took 10 years ago, 11 years ago, compared to the courses and stuff that are available today, they're really all the same in that they kind of neglect one little thing, which is called planned value. All right? Planned value is really important. If you're going to do anything with earned value, you've got to have your planned value first. All right. Now, remember the difference between these. Earned value, not even thinking formulas, just conceptually, right? Earned value is in your project, you've done a certain amount of work, right? A certain amount of things have happened. If we're in the executing phase, right? Actions have gone on, stuff has happened, and as that work is done, it creates a value. You're earning value as that work is done. If the work's not getting done, you're not earning value. If work's getting done too fast, you're earning too much value, right? So earned value is a great way to just measure the performance of your project. The planned value is kind of the same thing, except you're not in the execution phase, you're in the planning phase. And you're saying, hey, on this date, I plan things to be valued at this amount. Or this other date, I plan on being valued at a different amount. And so we need to understand how to get that planned value so we can then measure the earned value against it. And it is value, so it's easy to just think money, but it also has to be kind of factored into the work complete. And that means that this is an aggregate metric. It's a metric that combines two, or a composite metric, that's combining two different elements. It's combining the money you've spent with the percentage of work complete. And so earned value and planned value, while a lot of times they're represented in dollar signs, it's not truly dollars we're talking about. It's like it's like what I say about those YouTube people that they make internet money. It's not real money. They might have 1 million views, but they haven't really seen any real money. That's kind of how earned value is. It's not real money. There is real money behind the scenes, but earned value itself is more of just a placeholder number that lets us gauge that performance. All right, so let's start with planned value. And I've got my planned value kind of chart up here on my screen. And when you calculate out planned value, it's a pretty straightforward formula. What you do is you take your budget at completion. And this could be your budget at completion for the entire project, or it could be just for an individual activity, right? Remember, when it comes to earned value, you can be looking at your project as a whole, but if your project has numerous activities going on at the same time, looking at the project as a whole is not necessarily beneficial, right? That's something that a PMO might do. So if you've got a project management office, they might just say, look, we've got a portfolio of 20 projects. Let's just get a high-level view of what our earned values are across all 20 projects so we can identify which projects are at risk, right? So a PMO or a CEO, somebody high up in the organization, they want that big picture. And so they might be looking for a planned value and an earned value calculated on the project as a whole. And if that's what you're doing, your budget at completion, that's your total project budget, right? The whole shebang, the entire project, what's your budget? What's your dollar sign? And then you multiply that by the planned work. Now, what do we mean by planned work? Well, let's say it's a 5-year project and we're at the 2-year mark. And according to our plan, we should be 30% done with our project at the 2-year mark. And now we're at that 2-year mark. So I would take my budget to completion, I would multiply it by 20%. I should be 20% done, so I multiply it by 20%, and that's my planned value, right? The number that I get there. And then I can turn around and look at what's actually going on. I can look at the earned value, which is where we take the planned value that we just came up with, and we multiply it by the percentage that's actually complete. We multiplied it by 20% earlier because that's what we planned to be completed. But here, maybe we're only 18% complete, or we're 30% complete, or whatever. We multiply that out, and now we get our earned value. And when we compare the earned value to the planned value, we can determine whether we're ahead of schedule, behind schedule, or right on schedule. And I say schedule, it also factors in budget too, right? So it's not just schedule, it's really all rolled together. So it's really just kind of a red light, yellow light, green light type scenario with a project to know whether or not it's at risk. And remember for the exam that being ahead of schedule or being under budget are not necessarily a good thing. If you're ahead of schedule, it could mean that work's not getting done, that is being reported as done. Or if you are under budget, it could mean that money should have been spent that wasn't, and so certain work might not be getting done or certain items might not be getting purchased. You might be deviating from your plan. So those are as big a red light as being behind schedule or being over budget. So we always have to remember that on the exam, that the only good number is when these equal out. When your earned value equals your planned value, then everything's nice and works out great, and you end up where things are running well.
So Don, what I hear you also saying is that we need to keep in mind those project constraints, making sure that we understand that we're talking about not only the idea of cost, but the resources or deliverables that we might have on hand, as well as the time constraints too, that we want to make sure that that's all balanced, and this is what really helps us to show that we're on track.
That's it, yep.
Okay.
And I mentioned it like from a PMO's perspective, from the whole company. But if you're a project manager, you might just be looking at one particular activity. I might have an activity that's only 2 weeks long. It's a 2-week activity, it's 10 days. And I'm on day 4, okay? Well, how's it looking so far? Am I gonna finish on day 10? I'm not sure yet. We can use earned value and planned value to figure that out, right? So this doesn't have to be the project as a whole. As a project manager, you'll normally do this based on an activity. As a PMO, as a CEO, somebody like that, you'll do it on the project as a whole. But at the end of the day, the formula is really the same. That budgeted completion times the planned work will give you the planned value for whatever you're managing. And it's the planned work as of that point in time. Earned value is all about a point in time. We're going to talk in another episode about forecasting and how you can start predicting the future. And that's when you start moving away from a point in time. And those formulas are really easy to spot because they'll always have a lower, like a little, what's it called when there's a letter that's beneath the letters? Not a
subscript?
A subscript. They'll have a little subscript C on them. They'll let you know it's a cumulative value. So you've got these cumulative that'll be measuring multiple planned values or multiple earned values, and you can use those to trend and predict the future, right? That's different. With earned value and planned value, by default, you're really just looking at a single point in time, and you pick that time. And the time is normally now. We normally say, as of right now, what do I have? But you might be looking at something in the past and saying, you know, where were we at this point in the past? And the scenario there might be, I think my project is falling behind. Things aren't quite working out the way that I think. We have another project that was done in the company that followed the same pattern, right? That did the same type of thing. You see this in construction a lot. I'm building a house. I'm not the first person to build a house. Somebody else built a similar house. Let me go look at their project and look at their calendar and go back in the past and say, on this day, what was their earned value? And compare that to mine. And where mine starts to look behind, and I look at theirs and theirs look behind too, oh, it turns out we just didn't have an even distribution of work. That happens a lot, right? Where you might have a 4-day activity, and it might be 25% of the work getting done each day, 100% of the work, right? Or you might have front-loaded or back-loaded work. You see this especially when there's a lot of materials. So on day 1, you've got to spend $10,000 on material. But on day 2, 3, and 4, you're just spending $1,000 a day on labor. So the bulk of your cost is right there on day 1. It's front-loaded, or you can have it back-loaded too, where it's payment on delivery, that kind of thing. And those can really skew these numbers. And so that's why it's important to be able to compare with other projects and start looking into the past. So planned value, earned value, all about a particular point in time. So what are we going to see in the exam with this? Well, you'll see questions in a few different formats, and here's one example, all right? They're giving me some information. They tell me that my project has a total budget of $1.2 million, right? You got a pretty big project here, $1.2 million. And on July 1st, 2016, we are scheduled to be 30% complete. So we should be 30% complete on July 1st. What is the planned value for July 1st? Now, the first thing you might notice in this question is that there's a lot of data that's missing, okay? What's the duration of this project? Is it 1 month? Is it 1 year? Is it 5 years? I don't know, all right? And what day did it start? What day does it end? I don't know that either. All I know is that on July 1st, I'm supposed to be 30% complete. And it's easy to panic when you get something like this because you look at it and you're like, it's missing so much data. There's so much here that I don't have. But at the end of the day, planned value doesn't need a whole lot. It needs our budget at completion. What's the budget for my project? $1.2 million, right? And I need the planned work. Well, on July 1st, my planned work is 30% complete. So I've got all the data I need to calculate out the planned value. Now, once I have an answer, how does it help me? Well, it doesn't help all that much because you need to put it in context. But on the exam, it's not so much about putting it into context and solving that problem. It's about knowing what formula to use and how to get the result, right? If you read this right here and you had no idea what the formula was for planned value, it's really hard to extrapolate that. It'd be not impossible, but close. But if you know the formula, you just look at it and you go, okay, well, here's my budget at completion, here's my planned value, let's multiply those out, right? So what is $1.2 million times 30%? And sadly, the answer is that I don't know. So,
360,000.
Oh, thank you, Ronnie. So Ronnie has already figured it out for me. So if we do budget at completion, or $1,200,000, and we multiply that by our 30%, then we end up with $360,000. Perfect. $360,000. All right. So $360,000 is our planned value. And I should have written this a little different. I normally write it this way. So PV equals $1.2 million times 30%, which equals $360,000. All right. So as of July 1st, I should have achieved the equivalent of $360,000 of value. And that value is labor and other things that were budgeted and assigned to it at that point, and I should be 30% complete at that stage. And if I go and check my books and see that I've spent more than $360,000, then I should be more than 30% complete. And if I see that I've spent less than $360,000, then I should be less than 30% complete. So I can start to use that as a gauge of where we're at, and that's what we'll see with earned value. But on a planned value side, I now have a number, all right? And that number by itself is not terribly useful until I start comparing it with my earned value. But what you can do, nobody does this, but you could take your project while you're in the planning phase, and you could plan out or predetermine your planned value for every single day throughout your project. Well, imagine if you've got a 5-year project, and so you're talking about over 1,500 days, over 1,500 planned values that you have to calculate out. And if you're doing it per activity, you could have many activities on the same day. It becomes a nightmare. But if you're using Primavera or Microsoft Project or any of the various other project management software suites that are out there, they calculate this stuff no problem. And so you can just look at it and say, all right, well, what's my planned value here? What's my earned value? And it tells you, right? But on the exam, they want you to know how to do it by hand. Calculating that out, not very hard, right? Budget at completion times the planned work. Now, I did it for the project as a whole here. If you take it for like an individual activity, it's not much different, right? So this question says, the contractors for work breakdown structure task 3.1.1 won the contract with a $2,400 bid. All right, so that's the bid they put in to do this work. It says they've indicated the work will take 6 days and will be complete on July 7th, 2016. What is the planned value for July 4th, assuming an even distribution of labor? All right. This question it's almost the opposite of the last one. Remember the last one, how I said it was so devoid of information. It only gave us the bare minimum what we needed. This one is giving us too much information. And you will see this on the exam. They love to do this. They give you more information than you need. And the reason is some people will memorize formulas and they don't even pay attention to the question as much as just what values are provided. And they know what formula to use because of the values that were provided. So by giving you too much information, it's now up to you to pick out the pieces that you need. And again, you need to be familiar with that formula. You need to have the formula memorized so you know what to grab. So this one's giving me too much information, and yet it hasn't actually given me some of the information that I need. Like, what is my percentage complete on a particular day here? Okay? They didn't come right out and give that to me. They gave it in a bit of a roundabout way, right? Notice here how it says they've indicated the work will take 6 days and will be completed on July 7th. When you see it will be completed, that means 100%. right? It'll be 100% done on July 7th. And it takes 6 days. So that means that we start on, what, the 2nd, right? 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. Is that good math?
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be 6 days.
Math, see that? So we're going to start on July 2nd. And then each day we're doing work all the way to July 7th, right? 6 days. And so if I'm 100% complete on the 6th day, and they're asking for me to figure it out on the 4th day, right? Or on July 4th, not the 4th day, sorry, on July 4th. Well, I've got the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th, right? And then after that, I've got my 5th, 6th, and 7th. That's halfway through. And they're telling me it's an even distribution of labor. And so each day is seeing roughly, it's like 16.66% of the work or whatever. But what it works out to is because July 4th is right in the middle, it's 50%, right? If I'm at the end of day 3 on a 6-day activity, that's 50% of the duration. And if it's an even distribution of labor, then I should expect to be 50% complete on July 4th. So while they didn't come right out and say it, they did give me the information I needed to figure that out, right? So now I know my budgeted completion is $2,400. I don't care that it's a bid. I don't care that it's a work breakdown structure task 3.11. I don't care about any of that. I just needed that number right there. They said they could do the work for $2,400. And they said it would take 6 days. On July 4th, that's halfway, that should be 50% done on July 4th. And so if I take my formula here and start to write that out, my planned value equals my budgeted completion, 2,400, multiplied by my planned work, which should be 50%. All right? And if we work that out, that should be, I can do this math in my head. Look at that. $1,200. I'm so proud of myself. So 2,400 times 50%, $1,200, halfway, right? So my planned value as of July 1st, or July 4th, is $1,200. The reality is we could have figured it out for any of the days in there, right? Just the percentages might get a little bit harder. You might have 66.66% or something like that you've got to work with. On the exam, they usually try to use numbers that work out so you don't need a calculator because you don't have a calculator, right? So if you can avoid it, get better at doing these, you'll have scratch paper so you can do math by hand if you need to, but don't count on a calculator. You're not going to have one. So it'll normally be numbers like these that can be done in your head. All right, so that's planned value. These can be done very early on in your planning stage before you're actually executing, just while you're thinking about it. You can lay these out. Maybe you, when you signed this contract with the contractor, you made an agreement that you said, hey, it's going to be a 6-day activity. We're going to do progress reports every 2 days, right? So on day 2, day 4, day 6. And day 6 should be acceptance. That should be 100% done. You accept the product from the contractor and you're done. So we're going to do 3 measures. And you can calculate the planned value for those 3 measures very early on, right, in the planning phase. And then when you get to the execution phase, now when you're doing monitoring and controlling, there's those 3 measures, the 3 milestones for this particular activity. So on day 2, you need to go and collect your earned value. And then on day 4, you need to go and collect your earned value. And on day 6, you need to collect your earned value and compare those to the planned values that you set out way back in the planning phase. All right, so let's take a look at earned value now. We've talked about planned value enough. So earned value, very similar, except instead of taking our budgeted completion, we're taking our planned value. Okay, our planned value that was assigned, and we're multiplying that by our percentage complete, right? What of the work has actually been done? And that should result in us getting our earned value. So when we start to compare this, we can jump over to an example here. Activity 7.1 is budgeted at $5,000 and is scheduled to complete on February 28th. A status report dated February 26th indicates the activity is 20% completed. What is your earned value as of the 26th? All right. Now, this question can get a little bit tricky. When we start to look at it, we just worked through planned value. And when you look at planned value, I mentioned how it's really, a point in time. And when we take the planned value, it's the planned value of a particular point in time. The budgeted completion times the work we have planned for that moment at a particular time. And so that's the way that the planned value can work. And when you calculate it out that way, it is looking at that moment for what our plan is. When we get into the earned value formula, things get a little trickier here because reading this question, what is my planned value for the 26th? Well, I don't really know. It doesn't tell me. It tells me my budget is $5,000. That would be my budget at completion, right? And is scheduled to complete on February 28th, and this is February 26th. I don't really know my planned value for the 26th. So I might be tempted to choose that option on the exam. In the exam, you'll see a couple of different exam options, usually just numbers for the various formula results, but there'll usually be one that says not enough information provided, right? And I might be tempted to provide that not enough information provided. But when you look at the earned value formula here, when it talks about the planned value, it's really talking about the planned value at completion. What's our planned value for this activity as a whole, not necessarily on the 26th. So I don't know my planned value for the 26th, but I know my planned value for the activity as a whole is $5,000. So when I come down here to calculate out my earned value would be my planned value of $5,000 times the work that's complete, which I know is 20%. All right, so 20% of the work is done, and it's a $5,000 planned value. So if we multiply that out, fact check me here, Ronnie, but that should be $1,000, right?
It should be $1,000.
All right, so that is $1,000. Now, that means my earned value as of the 26th is $1,000. Is that good or bad? Well, if the exam is asking you to pick what the earned value is, you know the answer, right? You got it right there. The earned value is $1,000 as of the 26th. But if the exam is asking you whether it's good or bad, we actually don't have enough information for that. We don't know how long this activity is. This could be a 3-day activity. We could be on day 1, which is the 26th, and then you've got the 27th and the 28th. So we're only a third of the way through. We're not a third of the way through percentage-wise, so it looks bad, right? This could be a 100-day activity. This would look really bad, and so it could be bad. Or it could be that we have an uneven distribution of labor. This could be a backloaded labor activity where we expect to only be at 20%. Since I don't know the planned value for the 26th specifically, I can't say whether this is good or bad. So if they're asking me that, if they're asking me, am I ahead or behind, I don't really know, and I will have to choose that option that says not enough information provided. But if they're just asking for the earned value, I've got that. I've got my budgeted, what I should be at 100%. When I'm at 100% completion, my planned value is $5,000. That's what I've planned. Right now on the 26th, I'm only 20% of the way through, and so my earned value, regardless of date, is $1,000. If my planned value for the 26th is $2,000, then I'm in trouble. But if my planned value for the 26th is $1,000, then I'm right on track. And that very well may be that I'm right on track with plan. I just don't necessarily have that information here. Okay, so calculating out earned value can be pretty simple. It is easy to get tripped up though, especially when we look at our planned value here and calculate it out. Another thing that can trip us up is present value. Planned value and present value, they both get abbreviated PV, and present value is really talking about materials, usually your present value of materials versus their value in the future or in the past. But planned value is what we see in earned value analysis or earned value management, and EVM is what you're really being tested on. All right, let's take a look at another example here. This one gives us a good chunk of information. It says activity 4.3 is scheduled for July 3rd through July 6th. So we're looking at a 4-day activity. We've got a budget of $12,000. Labor and costs are evenly distributed across all days. A status report for July 4th indicates accounting has paid out $8,000 to date. What is your EV for July 4th? Now, as I read through this, what I'm trying to do is take this information and catalog it with where it needs to be, right? So I see that we're scheduled July 3rd through July 6th. So the first thing I thought was duration 4 days. Okay, so now I've got a duration. This is a 4-day activity. A budget of $12,000. Great, there's my budget at completion. Labor and costs are evenly distributed across all 4 days. Now I'm thinking, okay, I should have 25% of my labor done each of the 4 days. And if my budget is $12,000, I should be spending roughly $3,000 per day for 4 days, right? These are the things running through my head as I start reading this. I get a status report for July 4th. Well, this is July 3rd through July 6th, so we're only on day 2. So at the end of day 2, but it's a 4-day project, so that means we're actually halfway, right? So halfway through, I get a status report telling me we've paid out $8,000 to date, okay? Now, before I've even thought of a formula, I know that if I'm spending roughly $3,000 a day, I should be at $6,000 at the end of day 4, or at the end of the 4th, and I see I'm at $8,000 to date. So without even a formula, we kind of know that this project has some problems. It's advancing too rapidly for some reason, and so we've got a problem there. But they're not asking me about that. They just want to know what's my earned value for July 4th. That's all I need to know. What is my earned value, right? I actually have enough information here to calculate out my planned value too, but all they're asking for is earned value. So if I take a look at that formula, I can come in here and I can say earned value equals my planned value times my percentage complete. Well, my planned value was $12,000, right? That's my overall project cost or activity cost. And I'm going to multiply that by my work complete. And my work complete, well, I don't have it as a percentage of completion, do I? I have it as a dollar value, as $8,000. So what do I have to do? I've kind of got to convert that, right? $8,000 is a percentage of $12,000. It is 66%. So I'm going to just kind of put, it's actually 66.66 recurring, it's basically 2/3 of $12,000. So that's where I'm at right now, okay? That's my $8,000, that's what I paid out. In fact, I really didn't even need to do that because they're telling me here, July 4th indicates accounting has paid out $8,000 today. What is your earned value for July 4th? I paid out $8,000. That is my earned value, right? And so if you take $12,000 and multiply it by that 66.66%, you get $8,000. There's my earned value. I didn't even need a formula. They told me the earned value as part of the question, right? But I had to know that that's what I was looking at, that that's what I was seeing. Meanwhile, they gave me all the data for planned value, and so a question like this would normally be followed with, what's the current status of the project? Ahead, on plan, behind, or not enough information provided, right? And based on this, I do have enough to figure out my planned value. My planned value, if we just kind of update this, my planned value equals my budgeted completion, which is $12,000, right? Times, and then what my work completed should be. Well, on July 4th, that's the end of the second day of a 4-day activity, with evenly distributed costs, I should be at 50%, right? And so if I multiply that out, that's going to be $6,000, right? And if I take this one, let me make these kind of just look a little evenly here. There we go. So I've got $6,000 as my planned value and $8,000 as my earned value. I've earned more than I planned. And while that might sound like a good thing, like, hey, we're getting work done, it can be. It could be a good thing, and it might not be, all right? Maybe I had contractors arranged to come out. Let's say it's construction, right? So they're putting up drywall, and originally they planned to send me 4 contractors for 4 days to put up the drywall, right? But at the last minute, they said, you know, I got 2 extra guys available, so how about I send you 6 guys, and they come and they work 3 days, and then they're just done on day 3. And so they do that. They send me 6 guys, they come out and they start doing the work, and so I get ahead, right? It's going to cost me the same, except instead of being spread over 4 days, now it's spread over 3 days, right? And that's good. So now I'm on track and I'm ahead of schedule, right? And I'm going to come in at the same budget numbers, so I'm okay. But it could also be a problem. It could be, hey, I'm going to send you 4 guys, and remember how I said they were $15 an hour? Now they're $17 an hour, right? And now it changes, so I'm having to pay more, and now I'm going to come in over budget. So what this tells me is not that I necessarily have a problem, but I need to find out why there's a discrepancy. I see that difference, I need to go and find out why, okay? If they had contacted me and said, hey, we can send you 6 guys instead of 3, or what did I say earlier, like 4 guys
4.
instead of 3? So if they can send me 4 guys instead of 3, great, let's do a change ticket. Let's put a change ticket in, let's update our baseline, let's update our project to reflect this new change and put it in place, and now our planned value and our earned value will match, because our plan has been updated, right? When your planned value and earned value are different, it means that something deviated from plan, and that's never good. It's never good. I shouldn't say never. I guess there are possibilities where there's risks that you didn't recognize that come through, and you're able to capitalize on those and make a gain. That does happen, but for the most part, when those are different, it's bad. All right. So just be aware that when they give you information on a question, there's more than one thing they can be asking for, and potentially I could see this same question more than once. One that asked me my earned value, and it's easy because they already told it to me. Or one that asked me for the planned value on that day. Or one that asks me for the variance between earned value and planned value. All of that can be built off of this same question. I could see this same question 4 times, but then they ask me for a different detail out of it each time, right? So a lot of power can come from these. Trick is to just Get used to that, get used to the word problem format, read through them, practice, make sure you know the formulas. Because as you read through, you've got to be picking out the details that they give you and saying, all right, that's budget at completion. All right, there's my planned value, there's my earned value. And that way when you get to the formula part, you're just plugging in values and doing math.
Don, thank you again for showing us those demonstrations there on some of the different ways that we might actually be tackling word problems on the PNP exam. Remember that what we focused on here is the earned value. You can't really determine the earned value without knowing that planned value as well. So it's very essential that we know how to calculate that so that we can determine what we're really asked here. And that last little bit of information about maybe possibly seeing that same question, but being asked about different pieces of that information, that's something you got to actually be thinking about when you are actually in your studies here. Focus in on actually determining all those answers during your practice. That way when you're asked about it on the exam, you know exactly what you're actually asked about and what you actually need to determine from that without you having to go, all right, that same question again, let me redetermine every single one. Don, any last hints there before we close out the show?
Definitely don't stop here, right? So we got a chance to see earned value, but you're normally going to see it in line with variance, right? I mentioned variance a few minutes ago. So we're going to do some more shows where we'll cover schedule variance and cost variance, which are important to understand so you can start to measure that difference from your plan. All that gets factored in together, and so those are kind of key. And then we're going to do another episode down a little bit further. We'll take a look at the cumulative values because you'll need to be able to forecast out to the future. So we'll have to take a look at things like estimate at completion and budget at completion and all those other things and start to figure out where we're going to end up when a project kind of hits a future stage. So what we looked at here was really just looking at the present, but be aware that we're going to have to be looking towards the future a little bit later on. So we'll see that in the future.
All right, excellent advice for us, and that's a great place for us to end this episode. Signing off for IT Pro TV, I'm Ronnie Wong.
And I'm Don Pizzette.
And we'll see you next time.